Chuck Gallagher gives his clients what they need to turn concepts into action and actions into results. A man who truly appreciates life and has one of the best laughs I've ever heard. From Greenville, South Carolina, I would love for you to welcome Chuck Gallagher.
Every choice has a consequence. On October 2nd, 1995, I took 23 steps. That's the distance from the back of the room to this point right here. As I took those steps, I thought about my wife. I thought about my two children, Rob and Alex, so they were yay high at the time. I thought about my career. I thought about the church where I used to be the director of music. I thought about everything that defined my life. In Morganton, North Carolina, where I grew up, I was a somebody. But on that day, as I took those steps, on the 24th step, I reached out my hand, opened the door, and stepped into federal prison. There I became 11-6-42-058. What most of you would describe as a nobody. Ladies and gentlemen, every choice has a consequence. Now today is a different day. Thank goodness. Today is a different day, and normally I would take the opportunity to undo the handcuffs, but I have a handcuff malfunction, so we're just going to take these puppies off, and I'm so glad they stayed on. This is the strip portion of the meeting where I get to remove this, and we'll see what happens. You know, I'm feeling like I should have I tell you, it's fun to travel around and do some of the things that I get a chance to do. The orange jumpsuits is a bit of a blast. But the reality of it is that it's really aggravating when you go through airport security. Now, the orange jumpsuit is not the problem. It's the two sets of handcuffs and the carry-on bags. You all know you cannot have more than 3.5 ounces of liquid on an airplane, but I get to carry two sets of handcuffs. I could handcuff the flight attendants to the drink cart. I mean, I don't think about that often, but you know. But the reality of it is just strange. And then when you put it on the conveyor belt and TSA gets it, you know TSA, and it goes, and there it is, and somebody's looking at the screens. And they say, I need a supervisor. And the supervisor comes over. Is it okay to have handcuffs? And then they flip in the book, and it is. And you ask yourself the question, really? And then they look at me and they say, are you law enforcement? To which I really want to say yes. I really do, but that's impersonating an officer, which is subject to 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine, and I've already tried that crime once, and it's not worth it, okay? It doesn't work. So I just look at them straight-faced and say, no, I'm a pervert. And they look back and think, that makes sense. One of the things that I started with was a comment that said, every choice has a consequence. And some of you have to ask the question, okay, this guy comes up in an orange jumpsuit and admits he's a convicted felon, and he's talking about ethics. What can he share with our group? So some of you I know, the analytics in the room want something detailed. In fact, let me share this with you. I was at a university speaking, and there was an element of surprise for me coming in the room. And so we had dinner beforehand, and one of the professors was standing there, and we were going through the line having dinner, and he looks at me and he says, what theory of ethics do you follow? And I'm sitting there thinking, well, there's 4 I know, and there's a 5th that's kind of on the horizon, and I wonder what I should say, and then it hit me. And I looked back and I said, the theory that keeps you out of federal prison. I think he kind of got it a little better, but I'm going to, for those that need it, we'll look at the integral model, and we're going to talk just a quick few minutes about behavior. Now, if we look at this from an individual perspective, our intentions create our behavior. So if we're sitting here and we're a group of CPAs, attorneys, realtors, legal professionals, medical professionals, it doesn't make a difference. In many of the associations that I'm speaking to, there is a requirement for ethics or a desire. But the question is, what is it that we can do from an individual level and what can we do from a group level that is going to help our people understand how to make ethical choices regularly? Now, I know the question routinely will come up, what did you do and why? So we're going to look at the three components of an ethical lapse. It doesn't make any difference whether it's me, Bernie Madoff, a physician who just happens to be indicted for fraud, or whatever the actual circumstance may be. The reality is, as human beings, there are three components that always come together. I'm thinking business, but this may go beyond business. This could be that circumstance where there is a breach of trust in a relationship. But three things come together, so let me explain the three and put it into my story. First one is need, second is opportunity, and third is rationalization. So let's play it out. It's the mid-'80s. I was much younger, my hair was much darker, and I had more of it then. I was tax partner in a CPA firm. I had testified before Congress on various components of tax law, especially as it related to retirement plans. I had written articles in national tax magazines and taught continuing professional education courses in 30 different states. I had what at the time seemed like a really great career going. But I also happened to have a shadow side. And so now it's 2009. Let's think of 2009, 10, 11, 12. We are just coming out of one of the deepest economic recessions that we have seen in this country, and many people have lost their homes, their cars, their jobs. Well, back in the mid-'80s, I lived that. I was overextended and underfunded. That's a nice way for saying I had way too much debt. Now, I'm a simple man. So here's reality. Reality was, in 1987, I was behind in my house payment. Something that was very simple. So I had a need. Now, the unfortunate thing is, instead of choosing to do something that made perfect sense, for example, be honest with the bank, work out some sort of terms, I chose, well, let's put it this way. I chose to do what I didn't know what it was called at the time. I created a Ponzi scheme. Today, most everybody knows what that is. Bernie Madoff made that famous. Now he's North Carolina's favorite son. Well, not really, but he's up in Butner, not too far from here, with a 130-year sentence. So his life will end in prison. But I had a need. The second component part of that is opportunity. If it is an employee of your firm, if it is a partner in an organization, it doesn't make any difference what organization, what association it happens to be, but most of us are trusted in various roles. So I had the opportunity. I was a trustee of a client's trust. So there was need, and here was the opportunity to be able to tap into that. By the way, let me share this with you so we can think about it. This doesn't have to be that dramatic. It could be taking your girlfriend or boyfriend or whomever out to dinner at Ruth's Chris when you really can't exactly afford it, and putting it on an expense report, because after all, who's going to know? Didn't Rich tell us already that underappreciation is rampant in this country? Well, then that carries me to rationalization. Well, they don't really appreciate me, so I certainly can rationalize because everybody does it. In my case, the rationalization was simple. I needed the money, I stole the money, and I rationalized it was a loan. And I paid it off. But then I found out it was easy. Now, let me say this because the time is short and it's important. When the house of cards for me became significant and collapsed, I became very transparent. I came home and told everyone I was a liar and a thief. And I made restitution to the people that I had embezzled money from. By the way, let me say this so we're clear. That does not make what I did right. But I paid them all back with interest. I lost my career, my home, my possessions. Marriage was teetering on the brink of disaster. The only thing I had was the love of my 2 children because, frankly, they didn't know much better at the time. But here's a reality check. The local district attorney didn't want to prosecute me. He felt like I had suffered enough, especially since I had made restitution. But let me just share a little so you get a glimpse of how choices and consequences work. Because in mid-1991, there was a knock on the door. There were 2 guys standing outside the door. I looked. Very nicely dressed, I might add. And I'm thinking, So I opened the door thinking it's somebody handing out tracts or a salesperson, and they said, "Are you Charles Gallagher?" Now, most of you, especially in this room, will understand if you're called by your Christian name, you know you're in trouble. I mean, if your name is William Robert and you're playing outside and Mom says, "Billy Bob, William Robert," you get here. You know you're in trouble. I said yes. One of them reaches in his pocket, whips out a beautiful gold badge. The other follows suit. One was from the Department of Labor, the other from the IRS, Criminal Investigation Division. The Department of Labor wanted a conviction on embezzlement from a retirement plan. Because, see, I used to teach all around the country about retirement plans. Karma. The other was from the IRS. He wanted me for tax evasion, failing to pay tax on stolen money. Like I would have envisioned in my wildest dreams, 1040, line 37, stolen money, and put it there. Of course, I was tax partner in a firm. Karma. So needless to say, on October 2nd, 1995, I took those 23 steps. And I will say this to you, in a lot of circumstances where I have the opportunity to speak to people, it's not about the theoretical side of ethics, because we can talk about that all day long. It's the human side. It's that human component that comes together, because when we can remove one of these components that we talked about, the reality is the opportunity fails. And as association executives, association members, part of our job is to try to keep people between the lines. And that's what, in many cases, our job is from an ethics perspective. I will say this, prison was, well, let's just put it this way, it sucked. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it helped me understand what it means to truly be successful and find that second chance. Thank you.